All India Radio presents Morning News. Good morning. I am Sarabjit Kaur and with me is Saira Mushtaba. The headlines. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh says India has deployed armed forces along the LAC to counter Chinese deployment to safeguard the borders. India alleges Pakistani National Security Advisor deliberately projected a fictitious map. Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Package Insurance Scheme for health workers fighting COVID-19 extended for another 6 months. Recovery rate of COVID-19 reaches 78.28%. Government says there is no shortage of oxygen cylinders in the country. And IT giant Bill Gates says India's role in manufacture and supply of COVID-19 vaccine will be critical in containing the pandemic globally. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh yesterday asserted that India remains committed to resolving the current issues in its border areas through peaceful dialogue and consultations. Mr. Singh said India believes that mutual respect and mutual sensitivity are the basis for peaceful relations with neighbours. Making a statement in the Lok Sabha on the LAC situation, the Defence Minister said India wants to resolve the current situation through dialogue. He said India has been continuously maintaining diplomatic and military engagement with the Chinese side. Mr. Singh informed the House that India is taking a stand on 3 key principles. He mentioned that both sides should strictly respect the line of actual control and asserted that any attempt to unilaterally alter the status quo will not be acceptable. Mr. Singh also said that all agreements and understandings between India and China should be fully abided by in their entirety. The Defence Minister urged the House to pass a resolution in support of the armed forces who he said have been defending our motherland at great heights and in the most inclement weather conditions. He said China continues to be in illegal occupation of approximately 38,000 square kilometers in Ladakh. Mr. Singh said under the so-called Sino-Pakistan Boundary Agreement of 1963, Pakistan illegally ceded 5,180 square kilometers of Indian territory in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir to China. The Defence Minister said India had situations of prolonged standoffs in border areas with China in the past as well, which he said were resolved peacefully. Mr. Singh said even though the situation this year is very different, both in terms of the scale of troops involved and the number of friction points, India remains committed to peaceful resolution. He said violent conduct of Chinese troops along the LAC is a violation of all past agreements. The Defence Minister said though China has mobilized a huge number of army battalions and armaments along the LAC, the Indian Army is ready to deal with any situation along the border.
इस वर्ष हाल की घटनाओं में चाइनीज फोर्सेस का वायलेंट कंडक्ट सभी म्यूचुअली एग्रीड नॉर्म्स का पूरी तरह से उल्लंघन है। अभी की स्थिति के अनुसार चाइनीज साइड ने एलएसी और अंदरूनी क्षेत्रों में बड़ी संख्या में सैनिक टुकड़ियां और गोला बारूद मोबिलाइज किया हुआ है। चीन की कार्रवाई के जवाब में हमारी आर्म्ड फोर्सेज ने भी इन क्षेत्रों में उपयुक्त काउंटर डिप्लॉयमेंट्स किए हैं अध्यक्ष महोदय, ताकि भारत के सिक्योरिटी इंटरेस्ट को पूरी तरह से सुरक्षित रखा जा सके।
Congress MPs staged a walkout from Lok Sabha demanding discussion on India-China border issue. India has said the Pakistani NSA deliberately projected a fictitious map that Pakistan has recently been propagating as a meeting of the National Security Advisors of member states of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO. In response to questions on yesterday's meeting of NSAs of SCO member states, External Affairs Ministry spokesperson Anurag Srivastava said this was in blatant disregard to the advisory by the host Russia against it and in violation of the norms of the meeting. He said the Indian side left the meeting in protest at that juncture after consultation with the host. Mr. Srivastava said, as expected, Pakistan then went on to present a misleading view of this meeting. Government sources said that Pakistan's use of a fictitious map as a backdrop for its representative depicting sovereign Indian territories as part of Pakistan is a blatant violation of the SCO Charter and against all its established norms of safeguarding the sovereignty and territorial integrity of SCO member states.
The Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Package Insurance Scheme for health workers fighting COVID-19 has been extended for another 6 months. It was announced on 30th of March this year for a period of 90 days and it was extended for a further period of 90 days up to 25th of September. The scheme has now been extended for another 180 days. This central sector scheme provides an insurance cover of 50 lakh rupees to healthcare providers, including community health workers who may have to be in direct contact and care of COVID-19 patients and therefore at risk of being infected. It also includes accidental loss of life on account of contracting COVID-19. In Bihar, 29 people lost their lives and 11 were injured in lightning and rain-related incidents during the past 24 hours. Highest casualties of 5 were reported from Kaimur district, followed by 3 each in Bhojpur, Gopalganj and Rohtas districts. Remaining 15 casualties were reported from 10 other districts. The injured are being treated at local hospitals. More from our correspondent.
Most of the victims were working in agricultural fields when the lightning struck. Among the casualties, 2 are children and a woman. Governor Phagu Chauhan and Chief Minister Nitish Kumar have expressed grief over the loss of lives. The Chief Minister has announced an ex gratia of 4 lakh rupees each to the next of the kin of the deceased. He has also ordered free treatment to the injured. Met Department has advised people to remain alert as more rain and lightning is expected during next 24 hours in different parts of the state. People have also advised to remain indoors during the bad weather. With KK Lal's report from Patna, Tanvi Khurana, AIR News.
The government has said that the period of lockdown helped the nation create the required additional health infrastructure in the country. In its written reply to a question asked in the Lok Sabha yesterday, the Home Ministry said that as per an estimation, the decision of lockdown prevented 14 to 29 lakh COVID cases and 37 to 78,000 deaths in the country by slowing down the spread of the pandemic. It said during the lockdown period, dedicated isolation beds recorded an increase of 22 times and dedicated ICU beds above 14 times to what existed in March 2020.
The recovery rate among COVID-19 patients has reached 78.28%. In all, 79,292 COVID patients recovered and were discharged from hospitals in the last 24 hours. The Health Ministry said the total number of recoveries has reached 38,59,399. It said the constant increase in recoveries ensured that the actual caseload of the country is reduced and currently comprises only 20.08% of the total positive cases. Effective implementation of test, track and treat approach has led to higher recoveries and lower fatality. Currently, India's case fatality rate is at 1.64%. The total number of positive cases has now reached 49,30,236. Presently, the total number of active cases in the country is 9,90,061. In the last 24 hours, 1,054 deaths have been reported, taking the toll to 80,776. In the last 24 hours, 10,72,845 tests were conducted. So far, over 5 crore 83 lakh tests have been conducted across the country. The Health Ministry has said that there is no shortage of oxygen cylinders in the country. Briefing media in New Delhi, Union Health Secretary Rajesh Bhushan said, as of now, the capacity for production of oxygen is slightly more than 6,900 metric tons. Replying to a media query, Mr. Bhushan said that each state needs to ensure proper inventory management so that oxygen can be replenished in time. The ministry said over 38.5 lakh patients in the country have recovered from COVID-19 so far, and the rate of recovery on day-to-day basis is now showing an increase. Director General of Indian Council of Medical Research, Dr. Balram Bhargav, said that 3 vaccines are at clinical trial stage in India.
The Health Ministry has said that RT-PCR and Rapid Antigen Test or RAT capacities have been substantially scaled up in all states. In a tweet, the ministry said that every day on an average, more than 9.5 lakh samples are tested by government labs and more than 1.2 lakh samples in private labs. It said at this rate, India is slated to overtake USA in testing. The ministry said while the number of daily tests has increased as an integral part of Chase the Virus strategy, states have been advised that all symptomatic negatives of rapid antigen tests are mandatorily subjected to RT-PCR. A total of 4,263 fresh cases of COVID-19 were recorded in Delhi yesterday, taking the infection tally in the city to over 2,25,000. The Delhi government has confirmed that over 1,91,000 people affected with coronavirus have been cured so far. In the last 24 hours, 3,081 people recovered and 36 deaths were reported in the national capital, taking the toll to 4,806. Presently, the total number of active cases in the national capital is 29,787.
The Brihan-Mumbai Municipal Corporation (BMC) yesterday launched My Family, My Responsibility campaign in Mumbai for spreading more awareness about coronavirus. It is part of a statewide campaign of the Maharashtra government to stop the spread of COVID-19 virus. The civic body aims to reach 40 lakh households in the city under the campaign, appealing people to cooperate with the teams visiting them. A detailed report.
The Municipal Corporation of Greater Mumbai would be deploying 5,000 teams, each team comprising a civic health department personnel and 2 volunteers, 1 male and 1 female, for the door-to-door campaign across the city. Every team will get in touch with at least 50 families daily. 15,000 persons are being trained by the health department of MCGM to carry out this mission. The teams will check body temperature of each member of the household and oxygen saturation level. If any person is found to have COVID-19 symptoms, he or she will be admitted to a nearby hospital. The teams will also distribute leaflets providing information about COVID-19 and tell people about the precautions to be taken to avoid contracting the virus. The information gathered during the campaign will be uploaded on an Android-based app so that it comes in handy for the future use of effective implementation of the program. Sonali Ghadiyar Patil, AIR News, Mumbai.
In Gujarat, record 1,349 new cases of COVID-19 were reported during the last 24 hours. AIR Ahmedabad correspondent reports that the total cases in the state have gone up to 1,16,345.
More than 34,38,000 tests have been carried out in the state till date, out of which 78,182 tests were carried out yesterday. Out of 1,349 new cases, maximum 277 new cases reported from Surat. At present, 16,389 active cases are in the state, out of which 96 patients are on ventilator. At the other end, 1,444 patients recovered yesterday, which is the highest single-day recovery in the state till now. 17 patients lost their lives yesterday, taking the total death due to COVID-19 in the state up to 3,247. Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation has added 8 new areas in the micro-containment zone following detection of new cases. Yogesh Pandya, AIR News, Ahmedabad.
In Himachal Pradesh, the state cabinet has decided to allow people to enter or exit the state without e-COVID registration. However, in the wake of rising COVID-19 cases and related fatality, it has been decided not to resume the interstate movement of public transport buses. More from our correspondent.
The state government has decided that there would be no requirement for online registration before entering or exit the state. From today onwards, anyone could enter the state without registration. However, the interstate movement of buses remains suspended till further orders. Meanwhile, Himachal Pradesh recorded 8 more deaths due to COVID-19, pushing the death toll to 88. These fatalities were reported from Mandi, Una, Kangra, Shimla and Solan districts. On the other hand, 419 fresh cases were reported during the last 24 hours, taking the state COVID tally to 10,335. The number of active cases in the state has gone up to 3,801. Sanjeev Sundaryal, AIR News, Shimla.
You are listening to the morning news on All India Radio. A reminder of the headlines before we move on. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh says India has deployed armed forces along the LAC to counter Chinese deployment to safeguard the borders. India alleges Pakistani National Security Advisor deliberately projected a fictitious map. Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Package Insurance Scheme for health workers fighting COVID-19 extended for another 6 months. In Bihar, 29 people killed due to lightning and rain-related incidents in the last 24 hours. Recovery rate of COVID-19 reaches 78.28%. Government says there is no shortage of oxygen cylinders in the country. And IT giant Bill Gates says India's role in manufacture and supply of COVID-19 vaccine will be critical in containing the pandemic globally. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on our Twitter handle at AIR News Alerts.
All India Radio presents World News. News and views from across the globe. What happened? What is up next? The newsmakers and the highlights of the day. Every day at 10:20 p.m. in the night. On 100.1 FM, All India Radio.
In Karnataka, 7,576 new COVID-19 cases were reported during the last 24 hours, taking the total tally to 4,75,265. On the other hand, 7,406 people recovered from the disease and were discharged from hospitals in the state. So far, 3,69,229 people recovered and as many as 98,536 active COVID patients are taking treatment in various hospitals across the state. 97 COVID patients lost their life and the total number of fatalities have gone up to 7,481.
Odisha's COVID-19 recovery has gone up to 1,25,738. A record number of 3,714 persons were reported cured of COVID-19 yesterday, as against 3,645 fresh cases. However, the total caseload of the state has further increased to 1,58,650. The state has already conducted a cumulative total of more than 25 lakh tests so far. The death toll too has increased to 645.
Odisha has emerged as the top 3 states in the country having lowest case fatality rate. Chief Minister Naveen Patnaik said that with a COVID-19 fatality rate of 0.42%, the state comes after Assam with 0.32% and Kerala with 0.40%. Meanwhile, the state government has asked all the district administration to strengthen their respective critical care facilities to scale down the roast to the twin cities of Bhubaneswar and Cuttack, having better healthcare infrastructure. They have been directed to open more step-down ICUs and even to turn to virtual ICUs with provisions for expert advice from tertiary hospitals afar to cut down on the referral. Girish Chandra Das, Bhubaneswar.
The Tamil Nadu government has brought 2 amendment bills yesterday in the State Assembly relating to the control of epidemics like COVID-19. They seek to repeal the ordinances on the subjects promulgated earlier. Meanwhile, the active COVID-19 caseload in the state has come down further to 46,900. The total infection has crossed 5,14,000, while the recoveries have reached close to 4,59,000. More details on this from our correspondent.
One of the amendments to the State Public Health Act 2020 introduced in the Assembly aims at enhancing the penalties for violation of epidemic control regulations. The other one seeks to slap a minimum of 1 year jail term if the funeral or burial of a person who died of an epidemic is prevented by anyone. Meanwhile, the State Deputy Chief Minister O. Pannirselvam, who holds the finance portfolio, told the Assembly that 7,168 crore rupees have been spent on works relating to the pandemic so far. He also said a significant amount of money has been saved by way of freezing the dearness allowance, surrender of earned leave and leave travel concessions to the government staff and a few other austerity measures in the government's non-plan expenditures. Jai Singh, AIR News, Chennai.
Kerala continues to report surge in COVID-19 cases as it confirmed 215 positive cases yesterday. 12 more deaths were also confirmed due to COVID, taking the death toll in the state to 466. Meanwhile, 2,532 recoveries were reported in the state. The total active COVID cases in Kerala rose to 31,156. The Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan has reiterated that the COVID-19 situation in the state is very much under control despite the rising number of cases. Briefing the media, the Chief Minister said it is because of vigilance and the effective preventive measures from the beginning that the state has been able to control the spread of the disease and death in a better way in Kerala as compared to the overall situation in the world.
Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath has said that the state has set an example to the country and the whole world by successfully controlling the vector-borne diseases, Japanese encephalitis and acute encephalitis syndrome or AES. The Chief Minister said that the strategy applied against the communicable diseases in the last 3 years by his government has been exceptionally successful. In 2016, the deaths due to Japanese encephalitis and acute encephalitis were 466, while this year only 7 children died due to these diseases. The state government was already carrying out a massive campaign against vector-borne diseases and had announced that the coming month of October would be totally devoted to it. The Communicable Diseases Control Program would start from 1st of October and continue till October the 31st, while a fortnight-long Dastak program would also start from 1st of October.
The Microsoft co-founder and philanthropist Bill Gates has said India's willingness to play a big role in manufacturing COVID-19 vaccine and supply it to other developing countries will be a critical part in containing the pandemic globally. He said the world is looking to India for large-scale production of COVID-19 vaccine once it is rolled out. In an exclusive interview to a news agency, Gates, whose foundation is focusing on fighting the pandemic, called it the next biggest thing the world has been confronted with after the World War. Gates said India will be helping to make sure we have equity. We have a model that shows that getting the vaccine out to those who need it the most will save half the lives that you lose if you only send it out to the rich countries. He said the focus should be to keep the cost of the vaccines low and it should be ensured that they can be made in very high volume. Gates also complimented India's digital cash transfer scheme. He felt getting payments through digital cash transfers has been a fantastic thing, and obviously India has done that at a scale that no other country ever has. Further, he said the whole Aadhaar digital financial system in India has proven to be once again a huge asset, and it can be extended to all the countries of the world. Minister of Commerce and Industry Piyush Goyal has said that double-digit growth in exports last week shows that country is showing rapid recovery. The minister said that in the week from 8 to 14 September, the value of exports is $6.88 billion, up by 10.73% over the same period of the previous year. Mr. Goyal said this while addressing the inaugural session of CII's India-UK annual conference virtually yesterday. He also called for aiming for the target of $500 billion of service exports. Mr. Goyal said that this is imminently doable. He said we are all confident that under Prime Minister Narendra Modi's leadership, India will get back to 5 trillion economy target.
In Chhattisgarh, the Dog Squad of Security Forces is also playing an important role in thwarting the intentions of the Maoists in tribal Bastar division. These brave dogs of the State Police Force and the Central Armed Police Forces have helped in detecting a large number of improvised explosive devices or IEDs planted by Maoists in interior areas in the past few years. A report.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in his recent Mann Ki Baat program, had hailed the role of brave dogs of the security forces who perform their duties diligently to protect the country. In the Maoist-affected Bastar division, more than 80 dogs of local and foreign breed are serving the security forces. Inspector General of Police Bastar Range, Sundaraj P. said the dog squad has helped to avert many tragedies
बस्तर क्षेत्र में स्थानीय पुलिस एवं केंद्रीय अर्धसैनिक बलों के पास डॉग स्क्वाड में ट्रैकर एवं स्नाइपर दोनों प्रकार का डॉग्स अवेलेबल है। डॉग स्क्वाड के माध्यम से बस्तर इलाका में विगत वर्षों में सैकड़ों की संख्या में आईईडी एवं अन्य विस्फोट सामग्री जब्त की गई थे। इस कार्रवाई के दौरान हमारे कई डॉग्स घायल भी हुआ, कुछ घटना में हमारे डॉग्स शहीद भी हो गए।
The dog squad of the security forces has also played a very important role in the recovery of narcotics. Vikalp Shukla, AIR News, Raipur.
In yet another ceasefire violation, Pakistan Army troops initiated unprovoked and indiscriminate firing with small arms and heavy mortar shelling along the LOC in Sundarbani sector of Rajouri district yesterday afternoon, in which an army major and 3 soldiers were injured. PRO Defence Colonel Davinder Anand has said the vigilant Indian Army troops guarding the fence retaliated befittingly with equal caliber. Pertinently, this year so far, 1,816 ceasefire violations by Pakistan Army troops and Pakistani Rangers have been recorded along the LOC and international border in the districts close to the LOC and international border in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe and his cabinet resigned, clearing the way for his successor to take over after parliamentary confirmation later today. Abe, Japan's longest-serving Prime Minister, announced last month that he was stepping down because of health problems. Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga was chosen as the new head of the governing Liberal Democratic Party, virtually guaranteeing his election as Prime Minister in a parliamentary vote Wednesday because of the party's majority. Suga has promised to serve the interests of ordinary people and rural communities. In our series on Gandhian philosophy, today we bring you a report on Gandhiji's views on simplicity. Mahatma Gandhi firmly believed that the autonomy of each entity in nature needs to be respected and safeguarded. He promoted the universal coexistence and subscribed to the principle of reverence for all lives. Gandhiji was a passionate champion of a life pattern based on principles of simplicity. Gandhiji had said that live simply that others might simply live. More from our correspondent.
Gandhiji believed that a good life can be lived only in a small community, and he remained an ardent advocate of the village life through his life. He firmly believed that India lived in the villages. Describing the consequences of rampant urbanization, Gandhiji had said nature works unceasingly according to its own laws, but man violates them constantly in different ways and at different times. Nature tells man that there is nothing in the world which is not subject to change, and yet extraordinary occurrences startles us and sets us thinking. With Anand Kumar, Anupam Mishra, AR News, Delhi.
And now let us take a look at the weather update for the day. The national capital Delhi will have a minimum temperature of 26 degrees, maximum around 38 degrees. Mumbai, the minimum temperature will be around 25 degrees, while the maximum will be around 31 degrees Celsius. Chennai, minimum temperature around 25 degrees Celsius, maximum around 32 degrees Celsius. Kolkata, minimum temperature around 28 degrees Celsius, while the maximum will be around 34 degrees. In the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir, the minimum temperature was recorded at 25 degrees Celsius in Jammu, while the maximum will be around 35 degrees. Ladakh will have mainly clear sky. Temperature may hover between 9 and 26 degrees Celsius. In Gilgit, the minimum temperature was 15 degrees, maximum will be around 30 degrees. And Muzaffarabad, minimum temperature was 23 degrees Celsius, while the maximum is expected to be around 36 degrees Celsius.
And now an overview of today's newspapers. Almost all newspapers today lead with the statement of the Defence Minister Rajnath Singh on the status at the LAC. Hindustan Times states, China action sparked LAC standoff, India ready. Most newspapers also talk about the rising cases of COVID-19 in India. The Times of India states, India's COVID cases crossed 5 million, last million in 11 days. The Pioneer on its front page carries a picture of dignitaries attending the inaugural function of infrastructure projects for Bihar through video conferencing. And in some good news, the Economic Times reports TCS wants more women leaders in top tech.
And now, before we end the bulletin, the headlines once again. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh says India has deployed armed forces along the LAC to counter Chinese deployment to safeguard the borders. India alleges Pakistani National Security Advisor deliberately projected a fictitious man. Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Package Insurance Scheme for health workers fighting COVID-19 extended for another 6 months. In Bihar, 29 people killed due to lightning and rain-related incidents in the last 24 hours. Recovery rate of COVID-19 reaches 78.28%, and IT giant Bill Gates says India's role in manufacture and supply of COVID-19 vaccine will be critical in containing the pandemic globally. And with that, we end the morning news. Have a nice day.